Welcome to the podcast. If you'd like to listen to an ad-free version of this episode and all of our episodes, then search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. That's our premium channel where all of our ad-free and advanced episodes live, all in one place. True Crime Today Premium Plus. Search it on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. Even try it for 3 days free.
You're about to take a deep dive into one of the biggest true crime cases in the universe. Or, at least, on our part of the planet. From the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we dig into the stories behind the headlines.
And today we're diving deep into some very serious allegations surrounding Sean Diddy Combs.
This goes way beyond your average celebrity scandal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is serious stuff. We're talking racketeering, sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Accusations that paint a very different picture of Diddy than what we see in the media.
And to really understand this, we have to go beyond those headlines.
Right. We need to look at the legal documents, the evidence, and unpack what it all means legally.
Exactly. So let's jump right in with these documents. What stands out to you?
Well, they're dense. I'll give them that. Very detailed and frankly shocking. What really gets me is how the prosecution is using these documents to build a narrative.
And it's not just about isolated incidents, right?
Exactly. They're painting a picture of a long-running system of exploitation.
Okay, so let's break that down. The indictment keeps mentioning the term freak-offs, which seem to be at the center of this whole operation. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So freak-offs is apparently what Diddy and his circle called these multi-day parties.
A multi-day.
Yeah, we're not talking about a quick get-together here. These were elaborate events that allegedly involved drugs, sex, and a disturbing level of planning and organization.
That's wild. The indictment mentions thousands of bottles of baby oil and lubricant being found.
Right, and that's not a detail you just throw in there. It's meant to highlight the scale of these gatherings.
Yeah, like this wasn't just a casual thing.
Exactly. The sheer volume points to something much more calculated, and that's where it starts to get really unsettling.
And then on top of all that, there are allegations about Diddy's team setting up IV drips for people after these freak-offs.
Yeah. Supposedly to help them recover after days of drug use.
What kind of drugs are we even talking about?
The indictment specifically mentions ketamine and GHB. Both are powerful drugs that can be used to make someone more compliant or even knock them out completely.
Which obviously raises huge red flags about consent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a major issue here. With the allegations of drug use coercion, even recordings being used for blackmail, it seems Diddy's team will have a tough time arguing that everything was consensual.
You think that defense will hold up in court?
It's a risky strategy. Consent is always tricky, and it's definitely not as clear-cut as some might think.
Especially in a situation like this.
Exactly. The prosecution's going to argue that the power dynamics were so skewed that real consent wasn't possible.
Because of Diddy's wealth and status.
Right. They're going to say that compared to the alleged victims, Diddy had all the power in those situations. That kind of imbalance makes it almost impossible for true, freely given consent to exist.
So even if someone agreed to participate, the argument is that the environment itself was inherently coercive?
That's the crux of it.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, the indictment also implicates Diddy's inner circle.
What do you mean?
Assistants, booking flights, stocking supplies, handling payments. It creates this image of a coordinated effort to exploit people. And that's where the racketeering charge comes into play.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What does racketeering actually mean in this context?
It essentially means engaging in a pattern of criminal activity as part of an organization for financial gain.
So in this case, the prosecution is arguing that these freak-offs, allegedly facilitated by Diddy's team, were all part of a larger criminal enterprise.
Exactly. And that's going to be a key point of contention in the trial.
So we're talking about a pattern of organized exploitation, potentially. And on top of that, there's the sex trafficking charge. What makes this different from, say, a case about prostitution?
Yeah, that's an important distinction.
Yeah.
Sex trafficking involves force, fraud, or coercion to make someone engage in commercial sex acts.
It's about taking advantage of someone's vulnerability, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Often for profit. And in this case, the prosecution is building a case around Diddy allegedly using his power and influence to pressure people into participating in these freak-offs.
And not just pressure, but also threats, even blackmail, to keep people quiet.
Right. And that's where those alleged recordings come in. If the prosecution can prove that Diddy or his associates used those recordings to coerce people, it really strengthens the trafficking charge.
It's like a dark twist on what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Definitely. Except in this case, the consequences could be very real.
Absolutely. And this gets to the heart of why this case is so significant. It's not just about one celebrity's alleged behavior.
It's bigger than that.
It's about power exploitation and the potential for abuse in an industry known for excess.
And let's not forget, there are real people involved here.
Right. These are alleged victims whose lives may have been deeply affected by this.
And that's important to remember. Even if Diddy is acquitted on these charges, the damage to his reputation is already done.
Speaking of his image, Diddy has always cultivated this persona of a successful businessman, a philanthropist.
Larger than life.
Exactly. How do you think these allegations impact that image, regardless of what happens at trial?
Honestly, it's hard to see him coming back from this unscathed. His brand is all about luxury aspiration. Everything these allegations are not.
It makes you wonder about the disconnect between public image and private behavior, especially in a world obsessed with appearances.
It's a tale as old as time, unfortunately. But this case really has the potential to expose some uncomfortable truths about the industry and the code of silence that often protects powerful men.
It's a stark reminder that behind the glitz and glamour, there can be a much darker side to fame and fortune. And it's not just Diddy in the spotlight here, right? The indictment mentions this whole network of people, his enterprise, who allegedly helped make these freak-offs happen.
Right, and that term enterprise is very deliberate. It's the prosecution drawing a parallel to organized crime, implying a structured group with a clear hierarchy.
So not just a bunch of individuals acting independently.
Exactly. They're trying to show that this was a coordinated effort with different people playing different roles. And if they can prove that others were knowingly involved in illegal activities, those individuals could face charges too.
So we could see plea deals being offered in exchange for testimony against Diddy.
It's definitely a possibility. Prosecutors use that tactic all the time to build stronger cases against the main players. And then there's the whole other layer of who else was at these parties.
Because the indictment doesn't name any specific names, right?
Right, it doesn't. But we know Diddy's parties were legendary. They attracted some pretty high-profile guests.
You're talking other celebrities, athletes, business executives.
The A-list crowd. So it makes you wonder, what did they know? And if they knew things were going on, could they face any kind of consequences themselves?
That's a big question, legally and ethically.
Right. It's impossible to say for sure what they knew or didn't know. But this situation raises some serious questions about accountability. Even if these individuals weren't directly involved, were they willfully ignorant? Did they choose to look the other way?
It's a tough thing to think about, and it goes beyond just the music industry, doesn't it? This case has the potential to send shockwaves through those circles of power and influence that often seem untouchable.
It really makes you question the responsibility that comes with wealth and status. When you've achieved that level of success, you have a moral obligation to speak out against injustice, even if it means putting yourself at risk.
That's a question we all have to grapple with. And it's one of the many questions that this case raises as we dig into these allegations against Diddy. This deep dive has uncovered a lot more than just a celebrity scandal. We're talking about power, exploitation, accountability. And as this case moves forward, it'll be fascinating and honestly pretty disheartening to see what other truths come to light. But maybe, just maybe, it can spark a real conversation about how we create a world where everyone is held accountable for their actions regardless of their status.
In a world where the darkest secrets lie just beneath the surface.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence says otherwise.
Where hidden killers roam, unnoticed, in the shadows.
I think you would definitely be looking at a blend of toxic, very bad narcissistic personality traits, and they will be vengeful and possibly resort to violence.
Join Tony Bruschi as he uncovers the truth behind the most chilling cases.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence clearly says otherwise.
Each episode, we dig deep into the minds of those who commit the unthinkable.
To your point on narcissism, he thinks in his own mind how witty he is.
Yeah.
But he lost that jury. I was done with him in 2 minutes.
From unsolved mysteries to infamous crimes.
Geez, you've just talked about how you've taught yourself how to do everything under the sun. I bet you did a YouTube video, how to best kill somebody with a knife.
Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi takes you where few dare to go.
How does someone with such a dark secret go unnoticed for so long?
With multiple new episodes every single day.
We're not just telling stories, we're seeking justice.
Listen now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi.